I will start this presentation a little bit differently. I'm going to start with a short story narrative. About 5 years ago, I had an experience with my band called Few Wolves. I was a manager for them, and we were signed to a big record label in Denmark. So basically our promotion was therefore very targeted in terms of Denmark and nothing else basically. Unfortunately, our band did not really perform that well in Denmark. However, we discovered ourselves that we had a lot of radio airplay in Poland. The problem was we never received this info. The radio plays from our record label. They did not have any clue because this major label basically receives information very locally. So they will tell us if they play in Denmark, but not if they're in Denmark. So this made me wonder, why can't we in the music industry as individuals track our radio airplay so we can make better decisions, especially if we're being played somewhere important for our promotion and marketing. So my name is Jesper, and I'm the CEO and founder of WARM, the World Airplay Radio Monitor. I'm here today to tell you a little bit about radio airplay data. Only if you are in the music industry. So a main problem with this is that in the music industry, about 90% of the individuals are not receiving their actual radio data. And the main reason for this is that the existing services out there are focusing only on covering the biggest radio stations in very specific markets and countries. Also, these existing services are very expensive. They are mainly B2B products, meaning that only very big record labels and organizations usually can afford it. And this is, of course, a huge problem in the music industry. The primary people that are losing out is this long tail of the music industry. They're identify new and organically grown markets to understand their fan bases and where to target them. So obviously, radio data in general is super important for the music industry to optimize their efforts, to compare data points with other data sources that could be streaming or social media, for example. And then finally, this is also obviously important for having the evidence to support potential missing claims and collections in terms of royalties from a performance rights organization or collection agency. So therefore, we created WARM, the World Airplay Radio Monitor. We use audio fingerprinting technology and music recognition to detect radio airplay anywhere in the world. This allows, again, the long tail especially to access their own radio data, and thus they can make much faster and better decisions. You can think of WARM as a reverse Shazam for radio. We identify exactly when a song is played, and we will be able to display this in a dashboard to our users. We do this by monitoring 28,000 different radio stations in real time. And this number is increasing every day as we have a lot of users who actually help us upgrade our system. So, for example, when we have a new user coming from South Africa, he might be able to see that we are missing a certain radio station or several stations in South Africa. Then he can request us it, and this around 200 to 300 new radio stations per month. based on our radio our audience and users requests. We monitor radio stations in more than 100 countries, and here I have an overview of estimated coverage in selected countries. Of course, this can be very difficult to figure out. The radio stations always there's always new radio stations that opens and radio stations that close. Some get bought, etc. So it is basically a never-ending process of adding and maintaining the coverage of radio stations. In terms of competition or other services in the music industry, we have these media-based, Nilsson monitor, and music-based are basically the music industry standards. And as you can see, their combined coverage is estimated to be around 12,000 radio stations or radio channels. And we can see that a lot of these is probably also doublets. So Nilsson could cover some of the stations that Mediabase does, etc. However, it's clear to see that with a tool like Warm, you actually have instant global information available, which of course is super useful. Our users basically comes from all over the world. We have everything from record labels to radio promoters, to venue promoters, to managers, and of course the creatives, the artists, the bands, the songwriters, promoters. We also have publishers and various other entities in the music industry. So this is just to highlight an example of some of our users. We have created a super easy pay-as-you-go business model where even bedroom producers can afford to monitor their music and to identify their radio airplays globally and instantly. And the main thing that we do different than our competitors is that you can actually track one song if that's what you need, instead of having to pay a lot of money for a whole catalog of songs. We have also created a hopefully very user-friendly platform. This is one of the screens. This is the analytics page where you have a filtering options to see exactly what data that is relevant to you. And here is another slide that shows a global overview and on a map visualization. And if we go further, we can expand into, for example, Germany, where you can actually see the data down to city level. And of course, this is super useful when doing tour promotion, etc. You can see exactly what cities you're trending in. Also, we have an easy to navigate overview with lots of these filtering options, so you can see exactly the relevant data, and again expand in CSV, etc., PDF. So let's get to it. So why should you own your radio airplay data? Of course, as mentioned before, one of the things is to organically or to identify your organically grown markets. This is, of course, super helpful for independent artists that work more globally, where it's super important to figure out exactly where something is trending, regardless of the country or the city. So, of course, you can make a lot faster and smarter marketing and promotion decisions. You can also optimize your touring, control your promotion efforts. If, for example, you have hired a radio promoter to people just to basically trust the report you get. But in reality, not all information is correctly reported. There's a lot of manual reports involved in radio data, and especially coming from radio promoters. It's very much based on their interaction with the individual radio stations, whereas it could be super useful to be able to actually control what you have paid them to do. It is very similar as with the media companies or PR companies in general. If you hire them, no, you cannot guarantee anything, and you will basically just pay money for something that you do not know what is. So with a tool like Warm or others, you are actually able to control their efforts. At the same time, if you've sent some radio station, here you can actually verify the play or multiple plays. There's also it's also interesting to figure out whether you're in a rotation or if you're actually just had a single airplay, of course. And then finally, of course, the value in this data is so you can report you can actually go and do claims because with Warm you have actual access to your individual plays. You have a time and date stamp, you have a duration, so you actually have an actual proof and evidence when a specific radio airplay happened. And this is what you need to support potential claims. So I just want to touch base on tips and tricks you can do to get a play. Obviously, radio can be pretty tricky in terms of getting your music on the radio station, similar as with the streaming services and playlists, etc. There is a lot of curation involved, but whereas streaming services has these algorithms that can also generate music to playlists. With radio, especially the small, medium-sized radio stations, there is a person as a gatekeeper. So of course these gatekeepers, curators, radio hosts, radio promoters, etc., are super important to get connected with. So first thing is be investigative of the radio that you're contacting. Not do mass spam. Find the stations that you think works with the music that you're promoting. And in terms of communication with radio stations or these gatekeepers, it is important that you are personal and rememberable in your communication. So try to stand out. Try to be short and concrete, but maybe try and find your specific thing or niche that can trigger the gatekeepers. These gatekeepers and curators can be found, with email, LinkedIn, social media, etc. So it is quite a good idea to really dig in and figure out why do I see music this, and again, do not mass spam. Find exactly and try to build networks and relationships, of course. Another thing that is helpful is that you can also track similar bigger songs. So, for example, if you have made an alternative rock song that you're going to promote, you can find a similar band or a similar artist, and then basically see what radio stations have played this. This, of course, does not work if you feel like you have made a big pop hit. Therefore, you're gonna see what radio stations played Justin Bieber, because then you're gonna see a lot of very big commercial radio stations. And this is not what you want. So especially if niches like rock, alternative, indie, electronic music, etc. it can be really helpful to use a similar band or big artist to see when this is when and where this is played, so you get like your own short list of radio stations that is relevant for you. And then I think it is important, especially with independent artists and record labels, to think global and not local. So this is, of course, because with the help of streaming, music is globally distributed and accessible instantly. And that is also something that transmits to the radio stations and these gatekeepers and curators, because most radio stations are also available online, which means that they have probably audience all over the world in most cases. Thus, they are also interested usually to find new music and not really more about the quality of the music or whether this music fits their particular channel. There is also something relevant in terms of these sizes of radio stations. A very big radio station like Kiss FM, Capital, BBC, etc. is super difficult to penetrate with your music. However, if you find smaller radio stations, it is a lot easier to actually communicate with these gatekeepers and find a person to communicate with and get your music out there, which is what it's all about. Then this is something that is a little bit unorthodox, but again, as mentioned before, I would highly recommend that you do not just trust reports you get, whether that's from major record labels or whether that's from local monitoring. If you know what have happened, you can actually see the results. If you just trust someone's report, this is not necessarily the truth. We've seen many cases of misreporting and repeated reporting. So what happened last week and this week is combined, and instead of actually seeing what happened and when. This is, of course, super important if you want to be able to take control of your data, which takes me to the next point. Own your data, know exactly what happened. This way you can make a lot quicker and faster decisions. You also have the opportunity to challenge, for example, these reports and whether especially again from the upcoming segment and independent segment, I would focus on the promotion value over the royalties or the copyright, because collections about royalties and collection societies, etc. The problem here is that all countries handle their infrastructure of distributing royalties based on radio stations very, very differently. So, for example, in the UK, the rates attached to each radio station change every month. In Denmark, they change once a year. In the UK, for example, it's based on a second tariff, so there's a value per second of an airplay, whereas in Denmark, it is based on per minute. Actually collect your royalties, it can't be, but of course with the report like Warm, you have a lot better opportunity to get it. However, there is a lot of radio stations there is like a myth around it that they do not pay, but the fact is that most radio stations have to pay to actually exist. The problem is when they pay their money to a local performance rights organization, this organization can have various ways of distributing the money. So just because you're played on a small radio station in Lithuania does not mean that you're entitled to any money. this money, this entitlement is basically based on the local Lithuanian PRO's way of distributing the royalties. So you're using it for promotion efforts, also touring. You have a lot better opportunity to harvest direct value instantly. And then I just want to say that something a lot of people forget: if you're a German artist, maybe you feel like you should go through in Germany, but if for some reason you have something happening in Austria, it could make a lot of sense to focus your energy on Austria. It's a smaller country, but you can have a lot bigger impact compared to, for example, Germany. Super important music market, and you're in competition with all the 3 major labels and their prioritization in terms of international and local promotion. So I think very important that especially upcoming segment to focus on getting a large impact in a small market rather than having a small impact in a large market. So basically, that was all for me. Thank you so much for your time. And if anyone has any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. I'm here. I see there's already a few questions. I will start answering. Thank you so much, guys.